Hello, my fellow geeks. This is Vishal Mehra, and you're listening to the debut episode of the Indian AvGeek. And what a show we have for you today. One of my favorite things to do during lunch hour at the office is to open any aviation focused website and read what's going on in our universe. One of my bookmark websites, in fact, is networkthoughts.com, which is run by Ameya Joshi, well known name in Indian aviation, regularly analyzing airline networks, new routes, and industry issues. Ameya has worked with airlines like Kingfisher, Go Air, and AirAsia, and has been tracking Indian aviation for the past 2 decades now. His inputs even made it to the National Civil Aviation Policy of 2016. Apart from writing, Ame also enjoys teaching and has been conducting online sessions on airline network planning. And now, some of his students are part of various airlines in the network planning department too. Wow. So, without further ado, here is Ameya Joshi.
Thanks, Vishal, for having me here. Thanks for that wonderful introduction. Congratulations on starting this podcast, Indian Aviation and the overall AvGeeks in India. Definitely lacked one. And let's hope you get some wonderful guests going forward. And this grows in, now, what do you say, readership like it is for my blog. So maybe that uh, the hits,
Well,
the views. I don't know how podcast gets recorded or counted. So
thank you. Thank you, Ameya. I think it would be more in terms of listenership, but I think what all of us are going for, hopefully, is great engagement, not just in terms of quantity, but in terms of quality. We are a small, tight knit community of av geeks in the country, but growing strongly every day. And I hope this podcast is a small step in the right direction. So, thank you again for your time. What we will do now is we'll divide our talk into two parts. We will talk about two very, very interesting airlines in the country. We will start with the blue and hot, IndiGo first, and then we'll switch over to the red and cold, SpiceJet later on. All right, so let's start with IndiGo. It's on everybody's lips these days, every pink sheet. Um, Probably the most exciting airline in the world right now in terms of the work they've been doing, in terms of the talent that they are attracting. Peter Elbers last year from KLM, and we all know he was onboarded to really fast track the international expansion of the airline. And since then, there have been so many great high profile hires across functions, right? What I want to talk about today is tomorrow, on the 5th of August, it is Indigo's 18th birthday. And back in May, Indigo mentioned that they would be launching a new product, a new seat, a new business class seat. Uh, their first, of course, on India's business and busiest routes. Do you have any thoughts on that, Ameya?
yes, I mean, if you look at it, when they began operations, they went to the market saying they're better than Kingfisher, they're better than Jet Airways in terms of their finances, simply because they have a single type of plane. Their crew costs are lower, their training costs are lower, they can swap the planes, get a better OTP. But if you see over the last 18 years, all has broken down one at a time. I'm using the word broken down, but actually, if you see their finances, they've improved. So they came with this mindset of point to point flights, like a true LCC anywhere in the world. At some point of time, they decided to convert it and offer one stop or multi stop options to people, including checking in your baggage till your final point. Again, when the 321s were available, the 321 Neos, it moved from 180 seater 320 to a 222 seater 321 in the fleet.
Yeah, yeah.
The surprising part came with the ATR order. So it was a different fleet type altogether, a different maintenance needed, different crew set. You cannot swap, a different network altogether. And now we have the 350s on order. And just to take you back, when the first Neo came, and Airbus said that a Neo can accommodate 186 seats, they could add one row with the new arrangement with the laboratories and galley and so on. But the first Neo which Indigo inducted was actually 180 seater to keep things simple. So they were ready to let go of six additional seats, very
Yes.
difficult for a
Very
LCC.
interesting. Correct. Of
But
course.
but what mattered for them more was operation simplicity. This was 2016, 8 years ago. From then till today, we've seen the 321 new, we've seen the ATR 72-600, the 350 order being placed, and now we are at a juncture where a few months down the line, we'll have a business class in an Indigo aircraft. I mean, that was possibly the most unthinkable thing for anybody, even when the 321s and ATRs were ordered. So not that long ago, and that's where it makes it very interesting from a market standpoint.
And may I add, there are a couple of 777s from Turkish also around. And now there are few 737s from Qatar also, which are currently operating. Few more will be joining the fleet soon. So there's lots going on there.
Yes, absolutely. And these may be on damp lease. So yes, they already come in dual class. But then operating it for a shorter period, maybe a year or two, is different against committing your own fleet to have dual class for like a longer period.
And if I may just stay on that for a second, Amir, do you think Qatar would sell those 8 seats up front on 737s? Because I know on Turkish, there are few business class seats up front also, which only TK sells, right? Indigo doesn't sell those. And I think they have one or two different flight attendants also for that small cabin. Do you think Qatar would sell those seats up front?
Ideally, yes, because a lot of complaints on social media, at least, were with that feeling that I traveled till Doha on Qatar Airways and this was the service, and after that, I was put on Indigo. Now, if you go back as AvGeeks, we know that you are not put on that flight, but you were booked on that flight. So it's an oversight somewhere during code share ticketing that somebody had not looked properly on who is the operating carrier, and Qatar Airways remained the marketing carrier. But like it or not, the fact is that there was a huge gap between the Qatar experience and the Indigo experience. Now, what happens? A business class passenger was definitely not put on an Indigo seat. They were simply not selling such kind of code shares. But what happens is because you have this feed coming from Indigo on the India to Doha sector, and of course, premium product is important, especially for Qatar, which has minuscule seats in the market as compared to Etihad and Emirates. Uh, you're not able to capture all the market or even go into the market with a good footing. And these additional seats will actually help them try and take some or try and poach some passengers in the front cabin from competition and use that premiumness which is on offer, maybe for a year, maybe for 2 years, we don't know yet, to make some more inroads into the Indian market.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking about this though, Ameya. Why does Indigo need to do this? Why does Indigo need to introduce a business class product? I remember Indigo used to have this catchy line written on their ramp stairs, stairs for founders and their funders. And now it seems they are looking to launch a different product for funders, implying that there is only one class, which Indigo is, economy, which is great for all. They, of course, have a couple of extra legroom rows, but now to go from there to now launching this, a new business class product, why does Indigo needs this?
Yeah, that's a very interesting thing, and I've been wondering myself about it. So today, Indigo is amongst the top 10 carriers by capacity in the world, a very rare thing for an Indian carrier. But when you look at it from a revenue perspective, of course, currency fluctuations, INR, USD, Euro, so many other parameters for other airlines, it's nowhere close to that. Over the last 2, 3 years, or pre-COVID to post-COVID, Indigo has increased its prices or realigned its prices for the seats, XL, non-XL, window, aisle. It has also revisited various other prices like that of food, excess baggage, so on and so forth. So whatever could be pushed, it has been pushed till the envelope. Any more push, and it might have an impact on the passenger experience or the passenger willingness to pay. So how do you grow in terms of revenue? You can add flights, of course, that is happening. That is happening at a very good rate. Uh, but when you start new sectors, new destinations, you don't really start at the peakest of revenue. It takes time for the flights to mature. So, as a listed company which has done extremely well in terms of share prices, in terms of revenue, in terms of profitability, how do you grow your revenues from here? So, I was reading, there has been a lot of speculation. Will there be eight business class seats, which is essentially two rows, or will there be 12, which is three rows? Essentially, this is how the economics will work. If the 12 business class seats or three rows are going to replace about five or six economy class rows in an aircraft, if these 12 seats can make more money than the number of seats which it replaces, number of seats is another metric. What eventually matters is revenue. So if there is a belief in Indigo that these number of seats, business class 8 or 12, can make more money than the ones which they are replacing on the economy side, your overall revenue per passenger is going up because you are now carrying lesser passengers. You've taken away capacity from the aircraft. So your revenue per passenger as a metric has gone up. Your average fare as a metric has gone up. There are other benefits where you require lesser time to board the total aircraft because you have lesser passengers now. Even at 100% load factor, you will have lesser passengers because you've removed some seats. Business economy, yes, it remains, but you've removed some seats. So that is what it is going to happen. And this I feel is where it has Indigo to go. And that's just one part of the story. Indigo has been very sharp with understanding the market and tracking the market. The second part of the story is that today there are fewer business class seats in Indian skies than they were pre COVID or when Jet Airways was in operation. So the Jet Airways capacity which has gone out has not been fulfilled yet, even with Vistara and Air India coming together in a few months' time. And that's where I see Indigo jumping and taking that capacity. Now, of course, business class had some empty seats all along, but the drop is significant. So, if you had passengers who were flying business class in 2018 in India, today you have fewer seats, and the economy has done better than what it was in 2018. So, the potential to have business class passengers has gone up, but
Yeah.
the availability has gone down. And that's where Indigo, with its network capacity, cash balance to take that leap of faith comes into picture.
And they have, I think, such a hold over the corporate travel market also, mainly because of their network, mainly because of how deep and widely they fly across the country. They have a very large corporate travel base also, and I'm sure they'll be able to tap onto that as well and fill those seats. But with business, I think there are a couple of other things which might happen with the induction of the business class. I have few questions. Whether they will finally have hot food, whether there'll be ovens on the flight. I had a question around the ratio between passengers and flight attendants now. Would that change now, or do you think it'll remain the same? Especially now that they have, or they are expected to have 8 to 12 seats up front. Do you think one of those, do you think there'll be just one flight attendant able to serve them all, or will they have two? Will those two be solely for that cabin? What about the use of the restroom? There's one restroom up front in all the aircraft. Would that restroom then become exclusive for business class passengers? Would there be like a curtain in between or something? Rest of the economy passengers then would just have those two restrooms at the back. So I have all these questions in my head, but it'll be interesting to see how Indigo approaches all of this, and maybe we'll get some answers very, very soon.
Yeah, absolutely. I think at this point of time, there are more questions than answers, and I'm sure that their service levels will evolve. There
Hmm.
will be a
Yeah.
lot of no reviews that will be done internally and externally on what works and what doesn't. What will be interesting to see is how they price the product because with all assumptions that it's not going to have hot meals the way say Air India or Vistara serves, and not a traditional business class. It's going to be interesting. Are they going to use the same strategy they used for their initial product to stimulate the market, or are they going to go cutthroat? And that will impact how the market reacts to this.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many layers to this. There's a well known open secret about Indigo launching a loyalty program. They've tried their hand in the past, launching a couple of co branded credit cards, also. Not sure about the success of those, but I'm sure with the induction of the business class product, more aircraft coming in next year. There are 321 XLRs planned. 3 years from now, you'll see the 350s also. You'll see them flying long haul. They would need more credit card partnerships also, right? There are so many things to explore. But one more quick thing I want to talk about is their recent expansion into the Middle East. We are seeing flights from, uh, so many different places in the south, from Coimbatore, from Trichy. What's causing all this, rush to the Middle East?
Yeah, really interesting. Indigo has this old habit or almost discipline of chasing competition. They don't sit idle, and Abu Dhabi apart, when Fly 91 started, a very small one aircraft airline, they wanted to fly between Bhopal and Ahmedabad, and there was nobody else connecting this route. It wasn't a Udan route to give it exclusivity, but within days of the airline announcing it, Indigo launched its own flight on this route, and I'm not sure if it still operates. And Fly 91 pulled out within days, so it doesn't take any competition uh, no lightly. So every competition it sees is serious, be it a one aircraft airline or be it a larger. I think that's what is being repeated when it comes to Middle East. You see Akasa Air announcing flights to Jeddah. Indigo, which already operates, announced a second frequency. We have Air India Express and Akasa starting or adding flights to Abu Dhabi where they already operate, and then Indigo coming with a barrage of flights from Bangalore, from Coimbatore, from Trichy, from uh, Mangalore, and some of them daily, some of them 4 times or 3 times a week over the next 10 days or so. And if you look at it, it's a mix, right? So uh, Dubai is completely done in terms of bilaterals. Doha is completely done. Kuwait is completely done. So you have very limited points now in the Middle East where you still have rights to fly. And Abu Dhabi is one of it. I mean, the legacy or it goes back to the deal between Etihad and Jet Airways when additional rights were given. And those rights, of course, still stay because Jet Airways may not be there, but the deals are between two countries. So you have seats available from the Indian side to go there. Now, going to Abu Dhabi, you're catering to some market of Dubai, but you're also ensuring that it becomes a very strong market for you because you are a dominant carrier in most routes, and the competition doesn't get a chance to grow there. So, interestingly, this time they gave in guidance that they'll grow their capacity in high single digits. Last time it was 10 to 12%. This time it's high single digits during this quarter, and most of it is actually coming with fewer number of flights but longer flights like these international ones unlike the domestic ones, and that's where the capacity guidance is coming from. So you have these flights which are starting over the next couple of days. Secondly, they will suddenly see over August about 5 to 6 aircraft being freed up as the Qatar Airways Max 8 take over routes to Doha. These were the routes where earlier Indigo operated its own metal. So you will have these additional capacity which will get deployed. So despite the problems with deliveries from Airbus, with Pratt and Whitney issues on the grounded planes, you now suddenly have good 5, 6 planes which are there. Now 5, 6 for Indigo is very small, but that makes up about one-fourth of the fleet of Akasa, 1/7 for Air India Express. So you now have capacity to take on competition. And that's where this whole thing is working out one at a time, trying to fit one puzzle at a time.
Right. And by the way, I was just checking. Bhopal and Ahmedabad, of course, is still on the network. They fly the route on ATRs. And interestingly, now there are two flights now, from not being present in the market at all to now having two flights. So there's a morning flight and then there's a late night flight. It's interesting to see how they really look into this and operate this. All right. So this is one part of our discussion today. I want to talk about SpiceJet also really quickly. I want to talk about what these guys have been up to. We keep talking, we keep discussing SpiceJet on X so often. And of course, I read everything that you write on networkthoughts.com and on X as well. There are things I want to talk about. Um, for example, about 2 weeks back on 23rd of July, there was a SpiceJet board meeting and they approved 3,000 crores to raise 3,000 crores via QIP. Now, most of that, of course, would be used to raise money from institutional investors and buyers. I just want to know, what do you think of this move? It's also in a way reminding me of what happened in January. They had gotten approval from BSC for a fund infusion of about 2,200 crores. And they did two tranches of preferential issues. They raised 1,060 crores from that. Clearly wasn't enough. And now they are going for a 3,000 crore QIP. What do you think of all this, Ameya? And what do you make of this?
I think how SpiceJet has been surviving has been a question mark for everyone who talks aviation. Many expected it to not survive this long, but it has survived. And we have to give it to them for surviving and coming out with flights and having such a high load factor, almost the highest in the industry month over month. Uh, when it comes to fund infusion, I continue to wonder what attracts people to infuse funds in this airline. Last time we saw it wasn't subscribed. It is trying to do everything possible. A slump sale of its subsidiary Spice Express, which does the cargo part of SpiceJet and has its own freighters. And then, of course, the second one, which comes up now for 3,000 crores. Who invests? Now, SpiceJet, if you see, one of the lessors has converted his debt into equity in SpiceJet. At least I haven't come across any such case worldwide where one of the lessor is actually holding stake in the airline by this measure, that you couldn't pay me for my lease rental or agreements. So now I have a stake in the airline.
I mean, you have to hand over to the SpiceJet negotiating team for that. Yeah.
We keep reading in the news about so many court cases going on. They keep updating on what is
Yeah.
happening. Uh, Literally, they're fighting the battle at every end, and they continue to survive. So it's very surprising. Uh, I have also tracked them from a time when they were neck to neck with Indigo. Now they are a shadow of their former self. I keep seeing this. I think a couple of things went wrong when it comes to SpiceJet. The biggest was, of course, betting on the Jet Airways planes. They took over 30 planes, which were with Jet Airways, and when Jet Airways went down, they took. This was 2019, so the last of the plane actually entered somewhere between August to October, or maybe even later. Then we went into 2020, and that's what the end of the wall for everybody across the world, thanks to China. And no, you didn't even have a year to ensure that you're operating those planes. Of course, SpiceJet was in trouble. 2014 near-death experience, finance is still bad. But when you take up so much liability, imagine what would have happened had COVID not struck. They were actually on track to get to a market share which would have been neck to neck. At one point of time, they were going to code share with Emirates, and both Emirates and SpiceJet had come up with a press release stating that. Just that it did not happen for multiple reasons.
I
I mean,
remember
had
that. Yeah.
those
Yeah.
things been on track, we could be seeing SpiceJet in a very different format than what it is today. Who knows?
And they were also talking about opening a new Middle East hub at Ras Al Khaimah, if you remember. There were talks, there were active talks in that, and I think eventually Wizz Air came in one of those hubs. They opened their hub there, but there used to be so much excitement around SpiceJet, and unfortunately, all the news I hear these days is negative. There's news about how June salaries are getting delayed again. I was reading about rather, Delhi High Court directing them to pay 20 crores to engine lessors, Team France and Sunbird France by the 8th of August. So many things going haywire. There's, of course, a severe liquidity crisis. Their fleet is reducing, their aircraft are getting repossessed. And of course, you had mentioned briefly about the pandemic grounding. And, I do remember when they had taken over the jet aircraft, for a very brief period, they also had a business class product called Spice Biz. They tried all that, but it just seems right now like a very badly run ship. Unfortunately, they had a significant loss last year, about 423 crores. At the same time, IndiGo going gangbusters, giving bonuses to staff, and SpiceJet seems to be in a mess. Their revenue from operations decreased by 20%. So I'm not sure what's the way out. I'm sorry to put you on a spot there, Ameya, but is there any light at the end of this tunnel? Is there any way out?
So if you look at SpiceJet, they have a negative net worth of 2,585 crores. When you look at the 3,000 crore which they are looking to raise, if they manage to raise it, they'll become positive when it comes to net worth. And that itself is a huge thing in a market which gives them access to more funds, possibly more foreign funds, who knows, and in fact, better valuation in the market. This will also ensure that lessors start doing business with them, and that is one possibility. However, their accumulated losses have also increased. So they have increased about 400 crores, and now they stand around 7,800 crores, which is a huge number. And I mean, uh, Indigo did about 4,000, no, 3,000 crore in a quarter in terms of profits last year in one of the quarters, but that's not possible with SpiceJet. So it's going to take a long time to do that. But getting to a positive net worth is the first step. Getting more planes operational is the next step, and that's where you can increase your revenue. That's the only way to come out of this spiral. The lucky part is that one of the settlements which they've done has seen some of the Q400s being shifted to their own ownership as part of the settlement. The unlucky part there is, even when the planes are with them, they were so poorly maintained that not all of them have been up and running so far. Maybe because of maintenance reasons, but again, those are not yet flying. So we don't know if it's the lack of finances which is holding them back, lack of spares, or the maintenance was so poor that getting it up and running is going to take a lot of time. See, it's a spiral. They're sitting on a lot of losses. They have a lot of liabilities. The only way to get rid of them is either to renegotiate, which I'm sure they're already looking at, but to make so much money that they can take care of their present and also ensure that they can start paying off their liabilities. That's when the market will be in a position and willing to do business with them. Currently, that's where the challenge is, because there is no trust when it comes to this. From employee side, salaries are delayed. There were news about PF being delayed, which are statutory compliances. And you go to a lessor, they burn their fingers so badly. How do they really give more planes to them? So they're in a spot from multiple angles. The only way is to start making money and telling the market that that's the way forward.
Yeah, a few days back I was reading about Sun Country Airlines in the US and how they have pivoted their business model. They were mostly known as a ULCC, but in the last few years they have started flying all these cargo aircraft for Amazon, which is giving them a lot of comfort. And by next year, about 20% of their revenue would come from flying cargo aircraft for Amazon. They're about to bring in 7 8 more aircraft in the coming few months. Those aircraft were flying with Atlas Air, but now they'll be getting transferred to Sun Country. And it got me thinking about Spice Express. So maybe there's a way out there. I don't know, but we'll keep an eye out on that. And this has been fantastic, Ameya. Thank you again for your time. I hope we catch up soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here for your first podcast.
It's been absolutely my pleasure. Fantastic insights and a great talk with you, Ameya. Thank you. And I hope you have a fun time at the Indigo event tomorrow.
Thank you and same to you.
I couldn't have imagined a better show to take off the Indian AvGeek. By the way, Ameya, besides writing on his blog, also is very active on X at Khabri_Lal. That's KHABRI_LAL. Be sure to follow him there. And if you would like, you can follow me too. I am at Vishal Mehra. That's VISHAL, numeric 1, MEHRA. Well, that's about it for this show, for this week. I will see you next week with what promises to be an action packed week for Indian aviation. Till then, happy flying, everybody.